Welcome to the Hembury Books Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Muddett, and I'm the founder and publisher at Hembury Books. Today, our guest is Nick Croydon, who has more than 25 years' experience shaping stories from the boardroom, leading international publishing houses and book retail giants across the UK and Australia. Now the CEO of QBD Books Australia, Nick has shifted from nurturing the literary dreams of others to realising one of his own with his debut novel, The Turing Protocol. Born in Surrey, England, and now living in Brisbane with his Spanish wife, Esther, and their children, Nick brings a rare insider's perspective to the page, one honed in the engine rooms of the book world, now turned towards storytelling itself. Nick, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I was wondering if you could, first of all, tell us a little bit about your career and why you purchased QBD and became its CEO.
Okay, sure. 25 odd years ago, I left accountancy and finance world and went to work for publishing houses in the UK. And then I again kind of moved away from that to have my own business, which you know the trials and tribulations of that. So I put together a distribution company where I was buying overstocks from publishers and selling them around the world. I then started my own little imprint called Transatlantic Press, and made lots of non-fiction and classics and titles and sold those around the world. And then I thought I might as well go the whole vertical. And so I opened up some stores in the UK. I also bought about 16 independent bookshops where the people had nowhere to go. They'd reached retirement age. Their kids didn't want the bookshop, so it was either close or sell. And as you probably know, they're very hard things to sell. So I just went and said, okay, well, I'll buy them. And we just kept them all the same. We just had like a buying group. So they were still, the Kensington Bookshop or whatever it was. And they're still there today, all of them. So I was doing that, and during that process, I met up with, when I was traveling to Australia, I met up with the owners of QBD, and I became a friend of theirs. And I used to stay at the house and drink lots of wine and sell them books. And it was during one of these visits over 10 years ago now, where they said they wanted to sell QBD. And my original process was I went traveling around the world like I do, and I asked, Barnes & Noble, would you like a bookshop in Australia? Waterstones. I just went to all the usual suspects, and they all kind of went, Australia? No, thanks. Too far, too hard to manage.
Too far, too hard, too small.
Yeah. So I went back to the guys and said, look, you're not going to get a trade sale. You need to get financial investors in. As you've told me you want to leave, then you're going to need to get a CEO. And they were like, oh, no, we've got one. I said, okay, great. Who's that? And they went, you. So then I said, so I went back to Spain, spoke to my wife and said, hey, I might just try and buy this company. And
wow.
I spent about the best part of 8 or 9 months traveling around Melbourne and Sydney, seeing financiers. Half of them just, laughed at me when I told them it was books and retail.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the same today. And then the other half were like, oh, you've got some actual interesting numbers here. Yeah, let's talk. And so I basically put together a syndicate of about 10 people, and everyone invested. And so I don't own it all. I'm just an equal shareholder. And they said yes. And obviously then I went in as the CEO. And
amazing.
Took it from there. So that was about 55 shops we had back then in 2017, and now we're at around 19. Yeah,
you're around 19, and the growth has been incredible.
We doubled the sales. We've gone from about 80 million to 170 something.
So you have succeeded where others have failed. What is the secret to your success?
So I think the we obviously you had Angus and Bobson fail here when they tried to grow. I think that
And Borders.
Borders, and I used to sell to both of those companies. I think they just went too far. I think for QBD we can probably get to maybe 140, 150 stores in Australia, and that's it. Whereas Angus and Robinson had over 200, and you start making, I think, decisions you shouldn't make. So we've kept the same fundamentals when we open store number like 60 as we have in opening number 90. It's got to be the right size, the right location, the right traffic. So I think we're very strict on that. Also, we have invested millions of dollars in training, right? And we've changed the way QBD is sold. So I think if you went back 10 years ago, we were very much stand behind the counter, lovely people, knew a lot about books. You came up, we served you, and you'd have a chat, but now we try and get people out of the counter. We want them to greet people as they come in. We want to know much more about why they're here so that we can help them. We still want and have people that know a lot about books, but it's much more curated, and we want to make a customer experience, because you're fighting against some big players out there on price. So the only way you can fight that really is with customer service, right? And customer experience. So that's what we're kind of betting on. And then the other thing we have is we have a lot of products that are unique to us, right? So the products that I kind of like my old job in the UK. I buy products. I do reprints with publishers all over the world, not just publishers in Australia, right? So, and I bring those in, from China. My big warehouse here is full of books, right? And I'm the only one with them, right? So so they go on our tables. They're well priced, and I think that's the other thing that we have, that USP, is we've got amazing product that is unique to us, and it's also incredible value. So these tend to be on our front tables, right? And then as you come in, you see that, and then you might look at the new titles wall and go, oh, there's that new book from Nick Croydon. I'll have that, right? So and typically that's what they do. They come in looking for one book and they leave with two.
Very good, very good. But again, I mean, I read an article in ABC earlier this year saying that there's only 1,300 bookstores left in Australia, and that number is half what it was a decade ago. So not only have you doubled the number of your stores, but where others are closing, you're opening new ones, which is how do you think the books retail industry is at the moment? How would you describe it?
I would say it's under a bit of pressure. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything particularly new. We can talk about AI a bit later. When I was in the UK when Amazon arrived, right? So and I had all these bookshops. Right? So I had all these bookshops, and there was Amazon, and then there was the ebook, and they came at the same time, right? And we went through a similar experience. The UK, I think, lost 40% of its independent bookshops because they just didn't have the tools to fight, right? Or they didn't have the experience, so they just closed. And we had it. We had people coming in with their Amazon sheet of paper saying, "Can you match that price?" And we're like, no chance. But that's happened here a long time ago, 20 odd years ago, over. So it's not Amazon. They're still there as a big business, high discounts. But so are Kmart, Big W. There's plenty playing the price game, right? But there's also plenty of us who can give a different product. Harry Hartog, the independents, ourselves. We all deliver a different level of service and a different range of products. And I think we're generally an impulse buy to most people. Right. So a lot of our customers are just walking past and they see the table. They didn't intend to buy a book that day. They didn't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I must go and buy that novel from 5 years ago. Right? So we've got a proportion that are about 20%. Right? But most people, it's just, that's why we're in these high traffic areas. Right? We're getting impulse purchases, and then we look after them very, very well. Right? And so it's always customer first, and that's what we're drumming into our teams, that these are the people you need to look after. And if you give them a good experience, they will generally come back. And I will generally spend a little bit more in a fashion shop if I'm well looked after than if I go into a department store with the same brand, right? And I've got to do it all on my own. So I'll pay for that.
Do you think there's anything about the way that we distribute books in terms of, the physical printing, the trucking out, the stocking, the potential returning, the pulping, that could be modernized? Like if we think, the way that we consume music has radically changed. Do you think far into the future about things like that?
Yeah. So obviously I'm heavily invested in print, right? I say the ebook's been around forever now. It's still a force, right? Audio is growing, right? Especially with Spotify now involved, and look, it's a good format, right? Especially in this country where you drive long distances, right? When you're outside a lot, right? I think that's a good format. It's a shame I can't sell it, right?
I wish you could as well. I hope one day you do.
Yeah, it's difficult at the moment. They tend to either doing it themselves in Amazon and Spotify for that matter, and even some of the smaller ones are doing like exclusive deals. But the paper product is still strong. Their growth is still on a very small base. So are we losing market share? Maybe a little bit, right? But I just counter that with different products. But to answer your question about distribution, absolutely, I think that is a little bit archaic. Right. So I mean, even myself, I've recently done deals with publishers where we're actually avoiding sending the product back. So we're doing
firm sale.
We're not doing firm sale, right? We're pretty much turning the return into a firm sale, but I'm getting further discount. And because I am well known as a company that sells discounted books, we literally just create our own extra products from the shelf to the table without sending them on trucks and having all that process.
That's great.
Or even sometimes we have to rip books, which is like a crime. So we've just started that process with most, not all of them. I haven't got them all across the line yet. They know who they are. But I've got a lot of the majors over that, and it's a bit uncharted territory. It's new. We've only been doing it for about 8 months, so we think it's working, and it's certainly fantastic for the environment
consumer.
And for the consumer.
I have so many times, because books are pricey. I'm a Kindle person. That's one reason why. But I often lament the lack of discounted books. That for an author, right? If you walk past and see your book in the bargain bin, you feel ashamed. You feel a sense of shame, and you shouldn't. Because if I go clothes shopping, I regularly will purchase amazing things, and I'll consider it an amazing bargain if it's clothing. So why do we have this stigma with books?
Yeah. Well, I do the same thing with. I do backlist reprints. And I had this conversation years ago with Fiona McIntosh, where she said, "Oh my God, you just reprinted one of my books, but you're selling it for $14.99." I said, "That's right." I said, "It's a promotional reprint." He's like, "Oh, but is that good for me?" Right? And I was like, "Yeah, it's great for you." I said, "You're not going to earn a lot of money off of this item, right, as a royalty, but imagine that of the few thousand that I've sold, half of them didn't know who you were." Yep. And then they loved that book from 3 or 4 years ago, and now your new one, they're going to go, "Oh, I love that Fiona McIntosh. I really enjoyed that. It's $24.99 or whatever it is, $18 in Big W." They will introduce new readers. well, that's great for me because they're hard to find. I said, that's right.
That is absolutely the attitude to take. Yeah, I love it.
So that's what we do.
Could you tell me the biggest challenges for a self-published author to be stopped at a bookstore?
Yeah, distribution.
Mm.
Okay, so independent bookstores, good luck. If you're local, you might be able to walk into the store and go, hey, I've got 30 copies in the back of my car, right? Would you like 5? Right? But for any retailer of size, we're not geared up to be handling an individual account of an author. Also, they tend not to understand the discount structures. So they go, oh, I can give you 30% discount. So, well, that's not going to work. That pays the rent and the labor if you're lucky, right? They've got to understand that, right? Obviously, returns become impossible. So it makes it very hard for us to say yes. We want them to go through a distributor, right?
What about a distributor like Ingram Spark, but which is firm sale?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think as long as they've got somewhere that we could have an account with, right? That can do electronic invoicing, and that's the world we live in, right? Yeah. And an individual author can't do that. So they need to get a distributor of a size that the major retailers would be dealing with. Even if it's like it could be Pariba, it could be Woods Lane. It doesn't have to be United, right? You're not going to get in there, right? But it might be.
It can be really hard to get a distributor. I know, Woods Lane are sort of exclusively focused on Australian content, but our authors, for example, they're with Ingram Spark, which is the world's largest wholesale book distributor. But all bookstores should have an iPage account, but some sort of don't really like the firm sale, with the print on demand. Does QBD have a policy around indie authors?
No, not particularly. We don't engage with an independent author saying, hey, I've written this book, can I stock it at QBD? Let's say we're not geared up for that.
Yeah. Right?
But if they were with one of our distributors, and I don't even know if we've got Ingram Spark, if that's any different to the normal Ingram account.
Yeah, no, it's just a normal Ingram account.
Yeah, so we deal with gardeners and people like that. So if they were with them, then we could order through them. But how you also have to get our buyers' attention, right? And again, they're getting visited week after week after week by all the publishing houses. And you're coming along going, hi.
Hi, this one me person. This is the thing I explain to authors as well, is that you've got a really brief time in the sun at a bookstore if you get into a bookstore, because you'll be a new release for a month, after which time you have to make way for the next batch of new releases. And if it hasn't been sold, then that's your chance. It's
hard. I mean, one of the things I've discovered on this tour is, I went quite naively for somebody who's meant to know things. On the day of publication, I went rushing out to look at various stores to see where my book was.
Yeah.
And pretty much apart from QBD and Dimmock's, it just wasn't out, right? Because it takes some time to get it out, right? So and sometimes up to a week or 9 days, right? So so even if you get your publishing deal, then you get sold into the publisher. Then you run up against just life, right? That people take time to do things, right? And then, as you say, you've got that short window where you're watching your sales, and unless you've got something behind you, those can be quite small. I was quite surprised by the airport sales.
Saw your book at the airport.
Yeah, well, everywhere. It's well merchandised. A lot of people just browse that space and move on. So,
that's so.
It's not. I thought it'd be like one of the biggest selling spaces. It used to have such a presence.
The foot traffic is amazing.
Yeah, but not the case according to the publishers. Yeah,
I also heard that it's pay to play at the airport. They've got such
yeah,
limited space. You've got to pay to have your book there because it's such amazing real estate.
yeah. So yeah, they pretty much it's described to me as it's almost like a marketing campaign.
It is a marketing
Yeah,
campaign. It's the prestige of being at the airport bookstore
exactly. Yeah,
is the
it might not be correlated to high sales, but it's kind of like it's a marketing campaign. People see it and then they might recognize it when they go to their local
yeah.
independent or they go to their local Big W or local QBD, wherever it is they're going.
Mm.
Because they've seen it at the airport, they might go, oh yeah, I saw that. I might actually now, I was rushing to the plane, but now I've got time. I'm in the bookshop. I might have a quick read and yeah, that's kind of how it's explained to me.
And I was just fascinated to wonder about, with such a prominent position in the book world, to become an author. How was it getting a publishing deal? Did you have your choice of publishers or what?
Yeah. So I clearly had an advantage, right? And I asked the publishers this, and I don't try and hide it. I said, because of my position here, what happened to me? And they said, of the manuscripts we were looking at, you kind of went to the top of the pile.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
I said, okay. I said, but then what happened? They said, well, no, then we read the book and you're on your own. Right? If we had thought the book was bad, right, or we wouldn't have. You could run every bookstore in Australia. We still wouldn't publish the book, right? So they said, so the book from that point on, the book stood on its own, and I was like, okay, good to know, right? And then I sent it to 3 publishers, and I got 3 offers, which was great. And then and one of them was for the UK as well, right? And I wanted international distribution, so I went with that. And then subsequently, 2 or 3 months later, I sold the American rights to HarperCollins. So I've got a firm stroke Simon Schuster here, Simon Schuster in the UK, and HarperCollins in America and Canada. The worldwide English is now done. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And so you walked into those negotiations so well equipped to handle them, right? Because you understand inside out and back to front the book trade.
And that was even part of the premise of the book. I made sure when I was writing the book that I wasn't writing an Australian story. I was writing a story, that was mostly in England, right, America, right, a little bit in, quite a bit in Spain, right. So very much an international flavour, because I knew that if I just wrote an Australian story, it's quite hard
to get picked up. Yeah.
To get picked up outside of Australia. Right?
So you wrote to market.
Sorry?
You wrote to market.
I wrote to market, yeah. And I wrote to my strength, which is outside of Australia. I've experienced pretty much all the things that are in the book. I've been to those places or experienced them. And I knew the prize was America. So I made sure it had plenty of that in it too.
Wow. Has anything else surprised you now that you're an author, that you thought you knew all there is to know about the book trade, but it's given you a different perspective?
Yeah, so I've had a bit of flack about some of the content in the book, right, which surprised me, because it was read by so many people, right? From a complete diverse audience, and literally 30 people read the manuscript before we signed it off, and there was nothing. There was no comment, right, at all. And then some people took up a cause, and that was confronting. And I think I've dealt with it now, right? There you go. You learn something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I walked into a bookstore like you, like to look for my book, and it was just different, because I used to walk in as a book lover and just being surrounded by books. I'm drowning in books. It's heaven. But then when you walk in as an author, you're suddenly like, I am a very small fish in a massive sea,
And that's the problem. You like you say, I had that experience too, where you walk in and you go, they've got 3 copies fine out. Right? Now I know that is virtually impossible to sell from. right? Someone has to come in and want the book and going up to the counter and saying, do you have this book, right? Do you have Nick's book, right? It's impossible to sell despite that, right? So, that's usually the realm of backlist. You want to be on those front tables, right? So I always, as an author, my author tip is just take them out of there, take them up to the counter, be charming and lovely, right? Ask if you can sign the product, right? They always say yes. And then, if you're lovely and nice to them, say, could we have it on the new release table? Right, and half the time they go, sure, why not? Right, and then you're in the right space. Yeah, so I think if you're doing drop-ins to sign your product, also look where they've got it, and if invest in a little bit of flattery and see if you can't squeeze yourself on those tables.
That's amazing advice. You have also run publishing companies in the UK. I would love to hear about the differences between the UK market and Australia's market.
Yeah, so I think in fiction, one of the biggest differences, the first format in Australia is the trade paperback, right? Whereas in the UK, it's still the hardback. And so unless you're a name, which I'm not in the UK and I'm not here, and I'm a debut here too. But the difference is over here, all the money, all the marketing dollars from the publisher is going against the current trade paperback, right? And we're getting the sales now, and and the book is going to live and die on that format. In the UK, it came out a month after here, but it was a hardback. And they made a very small print run, right? And they just send it out to get reviews and feedback, and they're not putting any marketing against it whatsoever. They save all that up for the B format in the UK, which is often, well, in my case, it'll be in 9 months' time for the Summer Reads program in the UK, and that's where they put all their money. Right, and that's where you get the sales. Right, you get the sales on that. So they just told me, don't get excited about your launch. There will be no launch in the UK. There will be no interviews. There'll be nothing. We'll just literally chuck out 1,000 copies or 2,000 copies, whatever it's going to be, and then save yourself for the B format. So that's something I wasn't fully aware of. And over here, right, again, I think just the numbers can be relatively small. If you look at BookScan, you can almost jump a position on BookScan for every copy that you sell once you're down, to like level 200. Level 200, you could be only selling 300 or 400 copies a week, right? And then but if you sold 301. You jump a space, then two, and until you get closer to the top 100, where it goes into bigger numbers. So again, as an author, the more work you can put into doing these visits and selling even 20, 30 copies, even though if you add up the money on the night, it's probably not great. It's good for your BookScan, and lots of people are looking at BookScan, right, to make their decisions, right? So it's worth putting some notice to that.
Okay. Do you think, BookScan, you have to pay to access the data? Do you think it would help book sales if we had something equivalent of like the New York Times bestsellers list, even though that is, again, not strictly, not, it's a little,
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the problem with those lists is they're generally top 10, top 20, right?
Yeah.
And they're not split out by genre, right? That will just help the people who are already successful. They will dominate those charts. It's not going to help a debut unless you had a debut chart. So what happens with BookScan here? Pick a week. Let's say I was number 80, right, on the whole thing. So then what they do is they chop it up and go, let's see what you are in fiction. Okay, now you're number 12 in fiction. And then they go, let's see what you are in Australian fiction, right? And so then Australian fiction, you're number 3. And you go, hey, great, you're in the top 10 of something, right? And so that's what they tend to do. They tend to chop it up so they can at least give you the best representation of who you're really competing against. But the hardest thing, I think, is for debuts. And that was something I picked up on touring with Turing, was just how hard if I hadn't had QB behind me, it would have been really difficult, right? The book scan results would have been anything like what they are, right? And it's the same for anyone who gets our Book of the Month program. Yeah, that elevates debuts, because we'll sell 3,000 copies in a month, right? If it's a decent Book of the Month, right? And that obviously charts you incredibly high, right? Yep. On BookScan. But if you're a debut and you don't get QBD Book of the Month, which obviously there's only one, right?
It's only 12 a year.
Yeah, then it's hard, right? You won't be getting 1,000 sales a week. You might only be getting a few hundred, right? Yep. And that's hard mentally to deal with, because you've just spent 2 years or 3 years writing this novel, right? Yeah. And it's come out and you go, oh, we sold the whole Australian market and it's only producing a few hundred copies. That can be hard to deal with.
It can be deflating. And while it's only new for so long, isn't it? So those with most books, is it like the sales are great in the 3 months and then it starts to go down slowly?
Yeah, exactly. I think you've got obviously Books Month only lasts a month. But then any new release that we're getting now will they should stay there to Christmas. So that's why it's always good to get published in these later months, right? But also hard for debuts to get in there because they're saving that up for their big hitters, the publishers, right? But if you can get into maybe July, August, September, there's a very good chance that you'll stay there till Christmas and get the best that you can get, and then after that, you're pretty much done.
Pretty much done. Well, I can't accept that because the way that we do it, if you're self-published or whatever, it's just continuous. It's got to be continuous, and you can always drive interest in your book through your network or creating networks on TikTok or that sort of thing.
I think that's what you should do. You should do that whether you're self-published or published, because once you've gone through those first 6 months, you're going to be backlisted then pretty much, right? So you'll be spine out in the section.
Spine out, yeah.
So the only way anyone's finding that is if you do something as the author to tell them it's there.
Right? Yeah.
So I think it's great, and there's some brilliant self-published authors out there, and they've had some great successes. So there's absolutely, I don't think there's any stigma or is that you haven't.
No, but you've got to be able to. The thing is, if you're traditionally published, you've got to pay 50% of the retail price to buy your own book, and that can be an obstacle to putting on events and that kind of thing. And because you're not privy to the sales data until 6 months have passed or a year or whatever, so that can be demotivating. You don't know the cause and effect. But if you can buy your book for $10 a copy and you can go and do an event and sell a couple hundred copies, that's a much better.
You can.
Yeah.
You just negotiate. Everyone can negotiate, right? So my contract says the same, 50%, right? But and not because of me. If I had an event where I thought I could sell 200 copies or something, and the publisher, I would definitely go to the publisher and say, look, I'm doing an event. It's going to market the book. It's going to create awareness. But I want to sell the book at a discount. Whatever you want to do, I need a better deal. They'll give it to you.
Okay.
Negotiate.
I wanted to ask you, there's a lot in the news at the moment about, reading and being in crisis, and what was it, like 12% of Americans read daily or something like that. You're actually in the industry. Do you think we should be alarmed, or because I kind of think that books have been around in some form for millennia and they're not going anywhere. But what do you think?
Yeah, so I think books are incredibly resilient, and I can't remember where we got it from, but we were looking at some research the other day where it said 50% of Australians wanted to read more, right? So they describe themselves as readers, sometimes lapsed readers, right? But they had the desire to read more. They were just coming up against life and screens and all the things that get in the way of that. But they still recognized that they wanted to read more. And for us, we said, well, that's our opportunity. The people that love to read and come in every month, and they're part of our loyalty scheme, they're going to keep coming in, right? We just need to be nicer to them. But this bunch, right, we need to somehow attract into the store and fulfill their desire, right, which is to read more. So we're trying to, with our social media and some of our messaging, to inform them of the benefits of reading, right? So it will make you sleep better, it will make your kids brighter, it will make you earn more money, right? It will lower your blood pressure. All these things will happen if you read books. Yeah. And so what we want them to do is when they buy that book for a child, not only do they think, okay, great, I've got him reading. So no, you just instantly made your child's life better, right? Because he's now going to experience these things, right? And that and then hopefully they're going to get something for themselves. So I think we as an industry, and we're going to do it anyway, I think we just need to keep educating the public the benefits of reading, right? And that's pretty much our vision, is we want to empower readers, right? And that's what we say to all our teams, and we've got the people in store to do that.
And the pleasure of reading for me is second to none. It's just a lovely way to end my day. Every day.
Yeah. So because you're doing it, right? Yeah. And the things I've just said are true because you experience those things. You probably feel more relaxed reading a physical book in bed than even your beloved Kindle, right? Because that's a screen, right? And it just drops off the bed, as you fall asleep. What a great way to go to sleep.
Yeah. I just like my Kindle because I can highlight the passages that I really like, and then I can email them to myself. And if I don't know a word, I can highlight it and it gives me the dictionary definition.
Yeah. Okay.
And I buy books while I'm reading books.
That's good. I see them behind you. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I still love paperbacks. I love paperbacks too. And I love audiobooks as well. Nick, my final question for you is, what is next for you? What are your goals for the next 12 months?
Yeah. So next year is the 150th anniversary of QVD.
Wow.
So it was started in 1876. So we're going to have a big year of celebration and offers and promotions around 150. So I also need to keep my march on with new stores. We've got a couple of new stores opening, hopefully. I said I would like to get to 100. So I'm kind of 10 to go. So the next 12 months, we're just going to be busy celebrating our heritage, opening new stores, and keep talking to our customers, and for me personally, handed in the manuscript book number 2.
Oh, fantastic! It's just going to
and that's just come back for edit. So hopefully, if I get that done in time, I will get that out next year as well.
Wow, fantastic. Well, that's amazing. You're going to have another wonderful year.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us, Nick. It was absolutely fascinating to hear your insights.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.